I'd like to allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. Do we have any comments from the audience at this time? The audience didn't want to brave this come see our board meeting. It's their loss. Okay, do we have any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Sounds pretty quiet, so let's get a motion on that.
I'll move adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second. Okay, 4-0. Items for board action. 2020 DC Legislative Advocacy. Shannon, you're going to talk on this one?
That's me. This is the contract extension for ENS, our federal lobbyists. It's a 2-year contract extension for $87,600 per year plus travel expenses. ENS has been lobbying for us since 1997. I think have done an excellent job with respect to that. And this is the first increase in 3 years. This is a 4.3 increase over what we paid last year. Again, $87,600. I've estimated travel expenses based on past travel, past years at about $3,000 per year. Their primary focuses coming up will be on reestablishing and supporting efforts to fund fire suppression for us, fire suppression infrastructure for us, as well as forest management opportunities, helping to support thinning in the forests, which generates more water for water agencies and for us, and seeking new sources of funding for the for fire suppression and for the district in general. An example of that is that Representative Jared Husband just issued a new bill that has funding for potentially for water districts. What's interesting about that bill is that it has a size limitation for economically disadvantaged communities that is greater than what has been in past bills. So it's 60,000, which would change the playing field a fair bit for us and make us eligible for funding that we've not been eligible for in the past. There's a couple of changes we'd like to see to that bill to increase our opportunity to pursue funding under that. And so that's something that they brought to us really before it was published, and then we've identified changes we'd like to see, and they're going to be pursuing those with the representative and the author and trying to make those happen. In addition to that is our continued development of relationships on the federal side. We've seen, I think, good results from that in the engagement with Senator Harris's office when she was issuing her bill. She quoted the district, and John was able to provide a quote about the value for community hardening of firefighting infrastructure, and we see those as being very beneficial for us. We continue to develop that relationship as Senator Feinstein continues to get closer to retirement. We're concerned that we want to have an advocate on the Senate floor for the Tahoe region and specifically for SDPC. And so they've been pretty successful in actually developing some relationships there where I think most folks have not. So any questions about this? What we're asking for is to authorize the extension of the contract with ENS Resources for 2 years for lobbying consulting services in the amount of $87,600 per year plus travel expenses.
Here, well, we have this. We said you've been since '97, so it's long since before I was on the board. We had this conversation at lunch, so I don't know if we really need to rehash it. I kind of look at it as like it's marketing. You can't really put a finger on what it does, but we all pretty much are guessing that we get more than our money's worth out of it. So as far as I'm concerned, we'll stick with it. You guys, I know Jim, you're here for it.
Yeah, they've been very helpful over the years, and
And it's the type of thing you need to keep up and keep those contacts in Washington and the different offices there. You can't just say, well, we don't need them this year or for a couple of years, but then we need them, and it's hard to go back there today for, help, and they don't know who you are, because there's a turnover of all the offices. So they've done a good job and kept our name out front. We've been listed on several different bills and other reports that have gone back there, so we've got a lot of exposure. It's been good.
So actually, Shannon gave us a good read, so I'm going to go with so moved on what Shannon said.
And I'll
That's all right,
second that.
Okay, another 4-0, and you're on the roll, Shannon. You're up twice.
I'm up next, and this is a totally different topic. This is a request to authorize submittal to the State Water Resources Control Board to amend our application number A023393 to appropriate water. And so this is our surface water rights application. This has been before the board multiple times previously in how we're approaching and moving forward with our water rights. My intent is in the next month or two to bring you a much more detailed report about what we are doing with our, what we've done on our water rights applications, and then what our avenues for moving forward would be. This particular request in this agenda item is just to authorize us to submit an amendment to the application, which has been requested by the State Water Resources Control Board. They asked that we do that by the end of January, and we've made some tweaks. We have completed the water demand analysis we've been working on with Tahoe City and North Tahoe PUD, and that has, we met yesterday with the State Water Resources Control Board, Water Rights Division, and they were really pleased to see all three agencies from the basin together, working on this effort and coming together with a common voice saying this is what we need. The numbers, we haven't published that report yet. We'll bring that back to you in the future, but the numbers are well below the amount that is established as our cap for water on the California side of Tahoe underneath the Truckee River Operating Agreement. So all of that is looking good, and that's making them fairly happy with where things are going. But again, I'll bring back to you a much more detailed approach, detailed report, and we'll engage in a lot more conversation on what direction you want to take water rights in the future for the district. And again, this is just, we're requesting to authorize submittal to the State Water Resources Control Board of amendment application number A023393 to appropriate water. Are there any questions I can answer? I think before you have not the appendices, but you have the base, probably a dozen pages of the application itself, and a lot of the more substantive information in the appendices. We can provide that.
Well, this is one of those that I'm going to just trust staff, because this is a bunch of gobbledygook. And I'm more serious than I know. This is work with the district. We might as well get our territory staked out while we can. So it's a good thing.
And just assuming this is in line with everything we're talking about, so I think it's very positive step forward as well.
This guy's name on there, so.
Well, I was going to say, I might want to reconsider.
Elizabeth is part of this too, and she's checking Gary's work.
You can trust her.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll make a motion. We're going to read it.
Well, if you would listen, Shannon.
I'll follow Shannon's lead.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, another 4-0. Thank you, Jenny. You're off the hook.
Thank you very much.
Now we have a duo. We got Tim and Julie ganging up on us.
I'm gonna jump.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to take a bullet for Julie.
Tim and I are here today talking about extending 3 of the 4 of the midterm positions that were originally brought on staff at the district at the start of the leaders effort. And 2 of the 4 positions have recently been vacated, and we are refilling those. But we've got concerns about being able to keep staff in those positions with such a short term remaining. There's currently about 24 months left, 23 months left on each of the terms. The recruitment for the engineering position is currently open, and we're worried about getting quality candidates applying for that position with only 23 months left on the term. So we would like to have the board consider extending the terms for the meter technician, the customer service representative, and the staff engineer position. The one position that we're not requesting an extension at this time is the engineering department's meter project coordinator position, because when the meter installations end, we want to have the opportunity to take a step back and look at the future needs of the department and the skill sets that are going to be needed for that. Probably more on the inspection side, drafting and design side, than the current job description reads. And so today we're just asking for 3 of those 4 positions to be extended by another 30 months to June 30th, 2024. And that will coincide with the end of the current Prop 218 cycle. Now, if you agree that we extend these positions, that does commit the district to spending another approximately $632,000 to keep these staff on the payroll beyond the end of their current terms. But that funding has already been included in the budget and long-range planning. So,
Just to reiterate, a little bit of follow-up here. So I was watching the local news last night. Assuming it was real news, not fake. So they were talking about between California and Nevada that there's more jobs than there is people right now. So it's been really tough to find a good pool of candidates to interview. So I think by doing this, it would really help us out a whole lot. And as far as the meter tech and customer service rep, you know, as we get closer and closer to ending the meters in, the maintenance efforts are still there. So this is going to be an ongoing process for customer service, because I've had to reorg and only have 1 full-time customer service rep and 1 limited term. And then I've, due to some maternity leave, I've had to shift some people around. So we're really a little bit short-staffed in the front end right now. So if we could do this would really help customer service out.
likewise, on the engineering side, you know, we fully anticipate that we're going to need the services of the staff engineer beyond the meter, the completion of the meter project. Their responsibilities will just shift into supporting other projects. And as a reminder, it's the staff engineer in the engineering department that really does the bulk of the water modeling and support, basically provides the district's development support when those requests come in for new connections and things like that. And so I can't foresee a future in which the department will be able to go without a staff engineer without taking a big hit on the all the project management level staff.
Tim, how's the timing work with this, the time frame work with this possible future transition to monthly billing? Is that in that overlap too?
This is actually within the scope that we're looking at,
Good, so
monthly billing, because we are looking at monthly billing around January of 2021. Paul and I discussed this, and we would like to maybe meet with the finance committee in March discuss this further and look at what the cost is going to be with that.
Yeah, that's always been my concern on that transition to monthly is the cost, but I think it's something that we have to do. Is that correct?
Are we at a disadvantage because we're not offering these full terms and these, a couple of them that have left went to jobs that were full-time, one-to-one, and I'm not sure what.
You're okay.
Is that, would we be better off going ahead and making those permanent positions? Because we know we're going to have more engineering in the future.
Yeah.
And
I feel like the situation in engineering is a little bit different because the workload is so, not only because the workload is so tied to the capital improvement project, which we foresee, continuing in the future, but also because the level of engineer that we're looking for. I think that if we get a person in that position for 3 or 4 years, that's sort of like the ready to take that next step. Tiffany was with us for 3.5 years, and so it's not surprising to me at all that she was ready to go find something else, whether the position had been permanent or temporary. But that said, I really do think we need to take a look at making the position permanent in the future, and then just rolling with those punches as they come as people mature out of the position.
And Jim, I would agree with your comment because the volume of work from meter tech and customer service rep is not going to go down. It's going to eventually maintain, but it has increased. Since 2010 when we got aggressive in putting in meters. So these are definitely positions that are not going to go away because we'll have to have them there in order to maintain this $25–26 million worth of meters we got in the ground now.
So I think just to add in there just a little bit that it seems to me, Jim, I think in response to your question that this workload will be there and making these positions permanent in the future. I think we will come back and go through, John, we'll go through the finance committee and probably go through that process at some point in the future as assuming the workload continues to develop as it sits today. But at this point, we're comfortable with the limited term position.
Yeah, there's some interest, there's some discussion in making these full-time at this point, but I think at least for the next 2 to 4 years, we'll have a better idea of what our long-term metering needs are going to be, we'll have a better idea of how the engineering department has transitioned from meter projects to water line and sewer line projects. So the next few years, we'll just have a lot better idea, a better picture of what the long-term needs are going to be in both departments. So it seemed like it made sense to kind of tack this on the existing team and give us some time to make those investments in the future.
we do know that we're going to have increased work to do.
For sure.
Rather think about it now than put the thing off.
Yeah, we talked about we're just going to 2 years, 1 to 4 years, and I think that the consensus was let some of these changes play out. Let the meter project finish that one, and we'll take a look at monthly billing, we'll take a look at these ongoing metering maintenance needs, and put our heads together, and with that, I would say more permanent staffing solution together at that time.
I also get the sense that, limited term employees, once you get within about 2 years of the end of your term, you're starting to look around, you got, a family to feed and so you don't know that your job is going to be there in 2 years' time. And so I don't think we're going to be waiting until, June 1st of 2024 to continue this conversation. I think we'll come sooner because we don't want to be left in a lurch with a position because somebody got, nervous about their future here. So.
Yeah, I think 1 or 2 years, into this 4 year.
Still finance in that position, I'd be looking for a job, from year one.
Yeah.
And that's what we've had.
If something good came up, we'd jump.
And so these additional funds, these were allocated for staffing?
It allocated since the limited term positions were approved. We've kept the funding in our long-range forecast, not assuming that the board was going to cut them off at any particular date. And
So if and when the board does want to make these permanent, there won't be an additional hit. The fund will already be allocated.
Very good. So today we're asking you to authorize staff to extend limited term positions as follows. Technician, service representative, and staff. Much better than last time. Thank you, sir. I've worked on this for 2 weeks.
Thank you both.
Okay, we're going to talk about Keller Heavenly Water System. I believe Trevor's going to on this one.
Good afternoon, Trevor Phillips, Senior Engineer, here to talk about the first phase of the Keller Heavenly Water Systems Improvements Project. We received authorization to bid last fall and bid just for the holidays, and we received 3 very competitive bids with Vertic Excavating currently the low bid, $300,000 below the next bidder, and well under engineer's estimate of $2.3 million. We reviewed the sites, with each of the contractors, the mandatory pre-bid, we were able to get that done before the snow started falling. Randy Burdick, who's one of the owners of Burdick Excavation, was present for that, so we're confident in their bid that they understand the challenging site that the Keller teams present. I want to talk to you real quickly about the project. This is the first phase that will remove 1 of the 2 tanks. We'll stabilize, put in some rock wall protection fencing for the site. There's a significant mountainside slope with large boulders and rock outcroppings above the site. Our concern is if during a seismic event or from natural erosion, if the rock could fall from that hillside and strike the tank and cause damage either to the tank and or to the neighborhood if that tank was to be other elements, this first phase installs 1,000 feet of upsized water line, and that will significantly increase fire flows that are available at hydrants within the upper area. Through the modeling and alternatives analysis, we identified a constriction from the tank site down into the upper zone. During a subsequent phase, we'll replace the last bit that goes up the access road to the tanks. We're not doing that now because we want to, before restoring the access road, we want to make use of it during the construction activities during the next 2 phases. So the last phase will include that final. One thing you might be scratching your head over is why we're going from 2 tanks to 1 tank. One of the major things we looked at in alternatives analysis was how the zones perform below both the Heavenly tanks and Heavenly tank and the Keller tanks. And so there's a number of pressure zones as you come down in elevation from those. And we were able to shift a large number of customers from the Keller tanks to Heavenly tank, and those are fed differently. Earlier today I checked our power bills from before the change and after the change, and we've seen about a 15% reduction in power required looking at July 2016 versus 18. So that's about $800 a month in savings by doing that zone consolidation. And by shifting the resort properties off of Keller to Heavenly, we no longer have such a large firefighting community in the Keller tank site. So we're going to be able to go down about half. We're able to have our storage capacity there and still meet our firefighting needs. The other big line item in this phase is rehabilitating and replacing a pressure-reducing valve at the top of the intersection of Keller and Saddle. Which is similar to Pine Valley PRV. It has a hydro generator in it that powers the instrumentation and lets us monitor what's going on with pressure and flow in that area. It'll let us better track what water's coming down the mountainside and look for water loss and identify issues in the system. So those are the major elements, and we are pleased to see that the rezoning below the tanks is working effectively only capacity.
Trevor, I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the rock fall mitigation, pressing down quite a bit. I know at one point we were looking at really high numbers. We got another consultant who looked at it in more detail. And Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, just looking at the subtotal for that. So the rockfall mitigation elements, which include safety scaling of rocks, the barrier installation, and mesh netting. The bid we're proposing is subtotal is $330,000. At one point, we're thinking it could be close to $1 million. And we had Annette Fleming do a double check, do a peer review of the original design study, and they noticed a number of opportunities and assumptions that could be revisited to still provide sufficient protection. And there's multiple layers of redundancy in the original design proposal. And by looking at how we could still provide a high level of protection through a different system, we were able to save a substantial amount of money. So we essentially cut it in half, even including design fees, compared to what was originally proposed. I should have also mentioned during the alternatives analysis, we looked at a couple other tank sites, and we also looked at going to a new booster station for higher flows. And the alternative to provide protection of the existing site the district owns was found to be most cost effective.
Yeah, I just think that was great work on the rockfall mitigation to reduce those costs by over like $600,000, and not just accepting what we got from the original design, questioning that, getting another third party to look at it, and bringing us in at a lower number. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, and that element, the majority of the savings, we're dropping our overall project processing from close to 5.2 million down to 3.6. So the significant savings in that, along with some other elements, really brought down the overall project costs. And we are in the process of finalizing a state revolving fund loan for the project, so that will reduce that loan amount moving forward.
Yeah, I also thought it was great to see Burdick back in here bidding and making it. It's been a long time since they worked with the district.
I just want to echo John's statement. We have cost savings, energy savings, fire improvements. That's everything I love. And thank you, Julie, for the continual updates through the ops meeting. So I really want to say great job to you and the whole team. It's phenomenal.
I had a prior city manager by which we already used to the right kind of green.
Right.
So it's about a half-ton carbon a month. $4,800 for it.
Okay.
So with that, if there's any other questions, I'd welcome. Otherwise, I can read the requested motion. So I'm requesting award of the Keller Heavenly Water System Improvements Project, Phase 1, to the lowest responsible bidder, Burdick Excavating Company, in the amount of $1,702,038.
So moved.
Second.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. I don't have it up yet, but I bet you got 4 nothing on that.
There we go.
Like, I don't know, I got one straight.
So too soon.
It's overtime.
Well, now's the good thing.
Yeah, I know. Bubble up, dude.
Starting to sweat.
Yeah, we may have to do a voice vote on this one. We're not getting the flesh on this.
Your Jason's right.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so voice vote, next line.
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Sheehan? Yes. Wilson?
Yes. See, told you. Okay, payment claims.
I move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $1,183,547.37.
Maybe it's just that topic. We'll see. Look at that, it works again. Okay. For nothing. Next on the agenda is the announcement of the 2024 appointments. Standing committees, AD-HOCs, our liaisons, all that. I sent an email out a few days ago asking if everyone was okay with leaving it the way it was. I heard back from everybody. Jim, did you get Okay, yeah, so, I didn't hear, it's the old thing, if it ain't broke, you know, don't fix it, everything seems to be running good, everyone seems to be happy where they are, so, we're just gonna go with the same committee assignments as what we had, this past year. I have a list here, if anyone interested, if anyone forgot what they were doing. Makes it like that.
I'll email them.
Yeah, Melanie, I'll email them. So, okay, standing ad hoc committee reports. Move those. But, Paul, did you get that email I sent you a couple days ago about the successor agency to the oversight board of the whatever they call that?
Yes.
It looked to me like that was, I only bring it up because it actually was kind of a committee you and I are on, it's on the list here. And it looked to me like they were just doing rocks on that, is that correct? Yeah, you know, they were asking about availability, I said, sure, I'm around, so when could they schedule it? Right now. So that's why I'm on the meeting, but I don't think it was anything important, so.
No, I'm just extended rehire operating clearance that I think approved.
Okay, so that's all I had on that. How about board member reports? Okay, is there anything going on at the Eldorado County Water Agency there?
No, we didn't actually go to the meeting. It was a pretty light agenda that didn't really have a lot with us, and I always forget his name, Rick Lynn.
Yeah, and Rick is actually with us today.
So, okay. Hey, hello.
everybody-
You're right in the computer screen for me. And so we see him up here, so that's very helpful. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I think everybody knows Rick by now. We worked with Rick for a number of years. I think about 6 years ago, we did a renewable energy study for the district, and Rick's firm in to put that together for us. And so Rick is a consultant for Eldorado County Water Agency, and we've talked to Ken in the past about a better process on getting our projects funded. And part of that improvement is working directly with Rick Lynn and bringing Julie in. And we have some meetings set up to look at our current projects and some new projects for next fiscal year. So I think this is going to work a lot better with Rick here.
I saw something on the agenda about the SOFAR project. Are they trying to resurrect that?
I can speak. Rick? Yeah.
Well, thanks for the question, Jim. It's actually a reference to the SOFAR Cohesive Strategy Group, which is it's a collaborative that's been formed. I think it was formed in 2015. And the purpose of the group is to have water purveyors, other stakeholders, land managers work together to develop, I guess, consistent or joint priorities on what should be done with forest management on the west slope of the Sierra. So similar to the Tahoe Basin and the collaborative up here for fuels management, for forest management, there's a collaborative also on the west slope of El Dorado County. It just happens to be called the SOFAR group as well, right? It's not the South Fork of the American River hydroelectric project, right? Which I guess was first proposed back in the 60s, I think, or 70s.
Yeah, it got shut down twice, really.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and Kelly, just for your information, the El Dorado County Water Agency board agenda item, it was light, and that was the one topic, and basically on that topic, the water agency board approved Ken's participation as representative of the water agency in that SOFAR group, and the board also approved me as an alternate to Ken to participate in that group. So that was, I think, the essence of that meeting.
Will he be going to Washington with the ARPA group?
I understand he is. I actually have a meeting with him next week. I haven't gotten confirmation on that, but it's my understanding he's planning.
Ken is now on Office Federal Affairs Committee as well.
Yeah, Shannon, you're in contact with Ken probably just as often as I am, so did you have anything to add?
No, I
Okay.
was just pointing out that with regards to DC, he had indicated he was planning to go, but that he's also on the Federal Affairs Committee, so we hopefully get more representation and engagement on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you're up, John.
Okay.
Do you have a report?
Got a few things for you, starting with the staffing update, 4 items. Underground repair sewer, we had 27 applicants for that position. We interviewed 6 last week. Actually, really great candidates. And our selection is now in the pre-employment process. Next, in engineering, the project engineer position, we are interviewing 5 on January 27th. And also engineering, the limited term engineer, that's advertising through the end of the month. And then finally, customer service, the limited term meter tech position we talked about. That advertisement closed on January 6th. We're reviewing 35 applications, including 2 internal applications, and planning interviews on February 11th. Next up is Liberty Power, and I just wanted to mention that we've been ramping up our work with Liberty on a number of fronts, and especially Shelley. Planning, a number of items, including the planned power shutoffs, meeting with Liberty and sharing information about each of our systems, and looking for some special considerations for our own priority facilities as much as possible. Looking at vegetation management at our facilities for the overhead electrical. Looking at cleaner power at Luther Pass Pump Station and our time of use electrical billing. And then also renewable energy, solar projects, batteries, and electric vehicle charging stations. So Shelley has a couple meetings coming up. We have a large meeting coming up in March with much of our operational staff. So looking forward to really improving our partnership with Liberty this year. Next is Lakeside Park. We're continuing to work with Lakeside Park in a few areas as well. Gary has prepared a draft agreement in the process necessary for Lakeside to expand their service area into that triangle area that we talked about last fall. And then we want to begin our negotiations regarding the current and ongoing water service connections in the redevelopment area. So restart those negotiations from a few years back. And then I think while we're at it, let's take a look at the fire suppression capabilities at Lakeside Park, look at our intertie with Lakeside, see if we can make improvements, perhaps install a pressure sustaining valve, which would, if there's a low pressure, we see a low pressure in Lakeside Park, that would really expedite the district's flow of water into Lakeside. So we'll kind of start that discussion, and we'll keep the AD-HOC committee, Jim and Kelly, fully engaged on this. Next I want to talk about the county, actually county paving, and we've been talking about this last fall as well. We have ongoing issues in regards to the county's expanded paving requirements on our projects, especially our patch paving work for example, water line repairs and new service installations. Just the volume of paving they're wanting us to do on repair is very expensive and really not worth it for the customer or the district. So we talked about this last fall. We've seen some improvement at the local level, but it's really being driven by Placerville. So what we've done, Shannon, Chris, and Julie and I, we met this morning on this, and we're going to put together a proposal. We're going to take that to the county, at the staff level, to Placerville, and talk about our solution that we think makes sense for the district and the ratepayers and the community. And I thought I might also mention this to Sue Novosel, just kind of put it on her radar. I see her at those workforce housing meetings and otherwise. And just something to think about down the road, kind of like we have these city 2x2s. Maybe we want to do something similar with the county. So we'll keep you updated on this issue. And then last, I just want to bring up, at the city, they have selected an interim city manager. It's Brad Kilger, and he was most recently the city manager at Mark Martinez. He just retired last February. So Frank's last day is actually next Friday, the 24th. I'll see him next week and talk about that transition and where we can do to support that as well. And Well, we miss Frank, he had great ideas and really liked working with him, so it was short and sweet.
Imagine this new city manager, because he's recently retired, he's gonna have a cap on the number of hours he works, I would guess.
I think he's got his, I think after he's got a year or two PERS, I don't know if there is a cap.
But usually that's what happens when they bring a retired person, they don't want to affect their PERS payouts. So they can only work a certain number of hours, you know.
6 months typically.
Yeah, six months.
Prior to doing it.
Yeah.
They have about 6 months that they can work without.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and that's what we can get out of them, and hopefully they'll have to do with my deal.
That's all right.
Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, good. Now we're going to have attorney reports, and this is an interesting looking topic, Mr. Hughes. What's up with that? You were here last morning.
Well, I kind of caught a little wind of that, because I said, what the heck is that on there for? And then I heard a little bit about the meeting it is, so.
Yes, we had a member of our public here. We came to discuss and also present some data on VHRs and how they use water and sewer systems in tourist communities, and how they potentially can stress systems because of how they are used, because they typically will have more people in them than your average residents using the water and sewer at the same time. And his thought was that we should be able to assess a surcharge on them because of this additional stress they're putting on the systems. And as he was talking, my initial thought was, no, we really can't do that, because we can't really treat our customers differently and charge them differently. But after the meeting, a group of us did get together and discussed it, and we included our rate consultant on the call too, and ultimately came to that same conclusion that we really can't do that. They are paying their fair share for a few reasons. One, they are classified as a residential customer, so if they are a heavy water user, they will most likely jump into that second tier, which is 52% more than the lower tier. And so in a way, that they kind of are being assessed a surcharge because of that additional cost of that second tier. And then on the sewer side, these large vacation rentals that we see, you know, they have multiple bathrooms, sometimes multiple kitchens. And because of that, they are paying for more sewer units than your typical residential house is. And they're paying those, you know, every quarter, year in, year out, whether there's anybody staying in that house or not. So we feel like they're paying their fair share on that end too. And then looking a little bit more at the actual peaking or the impact that they are placing on the systems, we really don't see VHRs as being a major peaker of our systems. Really, on our water side, the peaking season is in the summer when people are irrigating. That's the high peaking time. It's not due to people staying in the VHR. And on the sewer side, it's the opposite. It's in the wintertime, and it's mainly due to I&I that's coming in our system during certain storm events. So based on all that information and how our system is used and how our system is designed, you know, we really didn't think that assessing a surcharge on VHRs was adequate.
I believe that John Dansky was here a year or so ago and wanted us to do the same thing.
He did have some similar comments, yeah.
So did you get back to Dan Brown?
Not yet, we're going to. I don't think he left us his information, so we'll see if we can pull it out of the billing system, I guess.
Thanks for the research. I was under the presumption in 2018 that wasn't even legally possible when we went through that process.
It may not, and I did want to add one more thing. This was some comments from our rate consultant himself. He thinks that possibly in the future, there may be a move to some more sophisticated rate structures like daily peaking rates or time of use rates, and that is due to the fact that more agencies are starting to use the automated metering infrastructure like we have, which allows nearly real-time reads. And as more and more agencies start moving towards this type of infrastructure, we'll be able to gather data over the years and really see exactly how each customer class is utilizing the systems. And so potentially down the road, as long as these types of rates are legally vetted and proved justifiable under Prop 218, you know, that's something we might be able to consider the next time we do issue a Prop 218.
Power company.
Yeah.
During lower rates and lower times. Okay, interesting. And we have a tanks update also.
I wanted to come and give you all a update on what tank assets we have, what condition they're in, and sort of a little overview of the system. It's not something we talk about a lot. It has come up a few times over the course of the last year with the operations committee, and so they thought it would be a good idea for us to do a little bit more in-depth presentation to the whole board. So I hope not to take up too much of your time, but I do have a few slides to go through. So I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to look at an overview of our need for tanks. I'll give you a summary of tanks that we have in our system and a summary of their status. I'll give you a few examples of some of the conditions that we're being faced with at our water and wastewater tanks. And I'll present a couple of different proposals for a tank asset management program. We haven't had anything formal in the past, and we're trying to figure out how to more regularly fund tank improvements so that we can keep on top of these valuable assets. So why am I updating the board now? Well, we had a concerted effort on cleaning and inspection in 2019. I believe the pumps crew inspected 6 of their water tanks, and then the engineering department coordinated the inspection of the 4 tanks that are on our wastewater system. And we didn't like what we were seeing in most of those cases. We're seeing a lot of premature cleaning failures all across the board. The other reason I'm here now is because we haven't had an ample budget for tank maintenance in the past. The pumps crew, they do budget for cleaning. I think it's $20,000 a year they set aside every other year to work their way on a rotation through all the water tanks in the system. And on the engineering side, with the development of last year's Prop 218 being focused on fire prevention or fire protection, there wasn't room within that budget to bring more tank projects onto the 10-year plan. So the only tanks that you saw on the water budget that we presented last year were the 5 tanks that were already in progress. So we're currently updating the CIP, and so we want to start this discussion with y'all and get some direction about what you'd like to see on the new version that we'll be talking about this spring. So why does the condition of our tanks matter? First, they're valuable assets. We have $28 million worth of tanks in our system. And when I'm talking about tanks in this context, I'm talking about our water storage tanks in our distribution system, and then the 4 steel tanks that are on our wastewater system. With the development of the asset management program over the last couple of years and the Prop 218 last year, we set a goal for ourselves of trying to get a 100-year life out of all of our facilities like that. Well, in order for us to get these tanks to a 100-year life, we really need to keep on top of their condition, keep them in good shape, keep on a regular coating and maintenance schedule. They're also important to the operation of the district because they provide us with a lot of flexibility in how we operate our systems. We could operate our systems without those tanks. We could run them as pressure systems, but having tanks allows us to take pumps out of service and work on them without risking being able to deliver water. They also provide water storage for firefighting, and so there's definitely value to the district there in having this reliable source of gravity-fed water available to firefighters when they need it. They also help us minimize leaks on the system because while we could operate the system as a pressure system, pressure systems are notorious for causing water hammer, causing leaks when pumps or PRVs malfunction. And then finally, they're important because they affect water quality. degraded tanks are breeding grounds for contaminants, and so we need to keep those tanks clean and in good condition so that we can continue serving high quality water. So here's a little rundown of what tanks we have. We have 20 water tanks. As Trevor mentioned earlier, soon we're only going to have 19 as we consolidate the 2 tanks into one at Keller Tank Site. A total of 9.4 million gallons, 14 zones. Most of our tanks are welded steel construction, but we do have a few bolted steel tanks in our system. 2 of those are the ones at Keller that are antique. But we do have 1 new bolted steel tank at our Country Club site that was built in 2008. It's performing surprisingly well. We took a look at it recently, and because those panels were all factory coated, they're holding up really, really well. The Keller tank project, we're also going to be installing a new modern bolted tank at that site for much the same reason. It'll hopefully help us prolong the life of those coatings and not have to do as much maintenance at that tricky site. And then we do have 1 CMU block tank, that's the flagpole one. We were before you 2 years ago, I think it was, when we went in and recoated the interior of that tank that hadn't been touched in 50 years, but was seeing some root intrusion through those blocks, and we took care of that problem, recoated it, and we hope to get another 50 years of life out of that tank. We have 4 wastewater tanks within our system, 2 million gallons of storage. 2 of those are located here at the wastewater treatment plant. 1 is regularly used on a daily basis for ballast for our backwash system for our filters. The other one is an emergency storage tank that, in my knowledge, has never been used. But it's available to us if we ever need it in the future. It serves our sludge facility. So all, and then we have 2 tanks out at Luther Pass, and all 4 of those tanks are welded steel construction. The solids tank here plant has an aluminum dome roof, and we went and inspected that, and it is performing quite well. And that's good news because that's the type of roof we're planning to install out at Keller, and it's also what we're considering out at Luther Pass. So this table has a lot of information on it, and I don't plan on walking you through it, but I wanted to make it available to you so you can see some of the statistics on our tanks, their individual sizes, values, and things like that, and then kind of where they are in our management program. So I used some color coding to help it make it a little bit more understandable. Generally speaking, green is good and red is bad. And so what you're seeing here is basically we've got relatively young tanks. All but 4 of them are less than 50 years old. We have a few tanks that we're behind on replacing their coatings, and we have a few tanks that we need to get caught up on inspection, and we're planning on those for this year. On the right-hand column, you see there are a number of tanks that have some work that needs to be done. And yeah, if you have any questions at all about any of these individual tanks, I'm happy to field those. So to summarize what I just briefly went over, our tanks are relatively young. If we're targeting that 100-year life for our tanks, on average, we need to get another 72 years of service out of those tanks. The color coding that I presented on the table was, it was developed based on a 15-year life cycle for coatings. Last year when we were working on developing the asset management program and how much we should anticipate spending on things like tank coating in the future, we were assuming a 25-year life cycle on tank coatings, but as we've talked to other people in the industry, what they're seeing, different agencies, they're actually using a 15-year life cycle target. And so that's concerning, because that means we haven't been planning so far enough money to keep on top of our tank condition moving into the future. And we have particularly challenging conditions up here with swings in temperature and things like that that are, we should expect a shorter life than a longer one. We are behind on recoating and touch-up, so we're doing our cleanings and inspections, but we aren't actively following up on the things that we find during those inspections. And as a result, we are seeing early failures of these tank coatings, and that's illustrated by the fact that 10 of the 14 tanks on that list have a high priority need that needs to be addressed. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about coating failures? Here's some samples of what we're seeing. These are all pictures that were taken this year in 2019. So the Cold Creek tank, that was recoated in 2012, and we're seeing some blistering and flaking of coating along the seams on the roof of the tank. The one on the top right, that's sort of interesting to me, because this is the backwash tank. So this is a more aggressive process water than you see in our water distribution system, because it's the muck that comes off the top of the filter. So that's a discoloration on the wall. But you're seeing early failures concentrated on the left-hand side of this photo. That's the south-facing roof. So that sunnier aspect, that's seeing more temperature swings during the course of the day, is not performing as well. Same on the bottom left. This is our EcoView tank that was new in 2010. The rafters are, the coating is flaking off the rafters in big chunks, but primarily on the south aspect of the tank. And then bottom right, this is our State Line tank, State Line 1 tank, that was built in 1984, and so this is the original coating that you're seeing here. So that has been in service for 25 years, and it has been noted in the last several inspections that it is due for recoating.
Julie?
Yes.
The picture of the State Line 1, is that also a picture of the ceiling?
Yes, you're looking at the ceiling. So there's a center column, it's a large tank. I think State Line 1 tank is the bigger one, is a 2 million gallon tank, but I'm not positive.
One's a small one.
One's a small one?
175.
Okay, so it's a 1.3 million. Okay, so why are we seeing these early failures? Could be in part due to the coating systems that we're using. Our wastewater tanks probably should be getting different coatings than our water tanks, just because of the aggressive nature of the water that they're storing. Coating formulas have changed over time. The challenge with coating the interior of the tank is that it has to be NSF 61 compliant, so it needs to be safe for drinking water. And so, the formulations are very specific. They keep changing them over time, and we're told they're getting better, but we just have to keep pointing that out. We've seen very different performance from different types of coatings than others, particularly around the wastewater treatment plant. So that could be a contributor. Quality control is really important. The later in the year that we're coating our tanks, the worse we're seeing the performance. We were just looking at Angora and EcoView photos last night as we prepare for the Luther Pass project to see, how much time did those things take to build and how much time did they take to coat. And we were coating those tanks in September, October, and November. And so, EcoView, seeing these early failures, it was coated in November. It's not super surprising that quality control becomes harder as the temperatures drop. And then having full-time inspection, skilled inspectors that have all the certifications to recognize the issues that we're having. We've moved in that direction in all of our recent projects. For tank coatings, we have hired outside inspectors that have, that's all they do. So they have ample experience on what to look for. But some of the older tanks, I don't believe that was the practice at the time those coatings went in. So that could be contributing. And then finally, as I mentioned before, exposure, we've got severe temperature swings. Tanks under tree cover seem to perform a lot better, or better on north-facing aspects. So, for example, our Iroquois tank number 1, I think, was last recoated in the 1990s. It was inspected this summer. There was a recommendation for some touch-up, but otherwise they said, keep going. The coating looks good. So, yeah, that seems to play a big part in the performance.
Any thoughts on cathodic protection, how that impacts performance?
Yeah, so the cathodic protection systems, we've got 2 different kinds that we have installed over the years. We've got impressed current and then these passive anodes. Either one is only protecting the tank on the shell wall from the water level down. It doesn't provide any protection in the headspace or in the rafters, which is where we're seeing the coatings fail, and which is also the hardest part of the tank to recoat. And so while we are probably extending the life of the shell coatings, we're not doing anything for that headspace and the rafters. Some of the things that we're considering for future construction are increasing the ventilation in that headspace, either with forced air or just larger vents. And then we're also looking at these different types of roof construction that get rid of coated steel beams on the interior of the tank, in favor of something that either can have an exterior support system or different material with no coating at all, like a aluminum dome roof or aluminum rafter supported roofs.
Would it be possible to incorporate planting or some other shade mechanism into the tank design? Because it seems like if we were able to create a tree canopy above it, if it exists, that's even better. But it seems like a cheap option to plant, and you get the additional benefit that you're saying, oh, we're also screening this above as well.
It's a dangerous line to walk though, because we also want defensible space, right? And so thinking about like distance from the tank, that we don't want to have any vegetation, so that we can feel confident that even if there's a forest fire blazing around it, the tank will continue to be able to serve water. Yeah, it's a tough one to want to rely on the tree cover as opposed to the tank being in the middle of the forest, so there is trees surrounding it.
Well, if that would work, then looking at some artificial mechanism to create the same benefits, where you don't run into any defensible space issue. I don't know exactly what that would be, but...
Do you know if the superstructure that we have at H Street and Cold Creek was conceived to be a shading structure, or was that purely just aesthetic?
Just aesthetics, which
Yeah.
attractive, but...
It's like these wood slats, that are on the upper half of the tank. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, and we're just thinking of some mechanism where you wouldn't have that same, you get the benefit, and maybe it's maybe cheaper than planting as well, whatever it can be.
Yeah, so all the things to think about, and we'll continue to work in that direction.
Well, and I think one of the approaches they're using on the Keller tank is these aluminum roofs, right? And that really does change that equation completely, because you don't coat those, and so you don't seem to have, we haven't had a problem with it. It does seem to resolve a bunch of the roof problems.
Tank that's out there on the hill above where the work fire was.
that nobody knew it was up there until the fire burned all the trees. Was that damaged or is that?
So are we talking about Angora tank, the one that's right on the ridge line, or the one that's halfway up the hill?
Halfway up the hill.
Okay, so the lookout tank. That one was amazingly not damaged. Am I correct in that? We went in several years later and repaired replaced the coatings. But immediately there, after the fire, we didn't have to do any repairs at that one. We did at Forest Mountain. Yeah, and that has always amazed me, that lookout wasn't damaged, because when you look at the heat intensity maps that the Forest Service put out, the hottest spot of fire was right around that tank. So I believe we kept that one full. So.
I remember when we did flagpole tank, I think we were looking at kind of camouflage netting, things like that, that would kind of achieve that shading effect. But
That's actually the image I had in my bag.
Yeah.
Some military type cover.
yeah,
Right.
like grapes.
Yeah, exactly.
It might also deter graffiti. Or at least it'd be hidden
Yeah,
under that.
or something else.
Or the rock plant, yeah. So, how do we move forward? There's a couple of different approaches that we can take moving forward to the maintenance and upkeep of these tanks. We can continue with the district-directed program, which is what we had. We've currently got a 5-year cleaning cycle. That's all that is required, and we haven't seen substantial problems with the water quality of the tank that would suggest that we need to up the cleaning cycle. However, the only inspections that we've really been doing methodically on the tanks is when we're doing those cleanings. And based on what we're seeing for failure rates of these coatings, it's a good idea for us to up our inspection frequency. And so whether that is something that we need to hire out, we can do with our staff, whether it's a full entry or popping the hatch on the top and kind of mapping defects that you can see from the top. Anything would be better than what we're doing right now. When we find those defects, we should be attempting to basically fix those defects that can be dealt with touch-up within a year of when they were identified, to basically keep them from getting bigger and giving us a worse problem that would require more effort to repair. Currently, we're making note of the defects, but we're not repairing them. And then if there's a full recoat project recommended out of an inspection, within 2 years, the engineering department should really be jumping on that to get those tanks recoated so that we don't end up compromising the structure of the tank in the future. So,
just to point out with that, the coating repairs, that's not something the district staff can do. It's something we have to contract out and bring somebody back in. Am I correct about that?
it would be much easier to bring somebody back in to do those repairs, mainly because we're not set up with the scaffolding or, you know, we have small manways, so we're not getting lifts or anything inside these tanks to get to the rafters to touch up the places that are seeing the most defects. So alternatively, there are firms out there that do provide service contracts for tank maintenance. And so we've talked with a couple of different firms over the course of the last several months that offer these services. They have different kind of approaches to them. One of them we talked to, you do a full tank recoating and then it's basically starting like new, and then they take it over from there. Another one we talked to said, we come and do an inspection and then we give you a quote based on what your current condition is, but then we take it from there in its current state. So we could do some more investigation on what those different price structures would look like. But then basically they're on the hook for keeping our tanks in good repair. So, any questions on?
I mean, do you see this resulting in life cycle cost savings going forward? I mean, I know that would be hard to capture kind of with the information you have now.
Yeah, ideally, we would get ourselves in a routine of repairing these defects when they're small. Because depending on who you talk to, you can get far more than a 15-year life if you keep the coating intact. But once it's not intact, then that's when it really starts to snowball. And so, yeah, that's what a service contract would be responsible to provide for us, without, you know, distracting our staff from, you know, the day-to-day operation of keeping the system running. And I think that's largely the source of the issue. Tanks are outside out of mind, right? And, you know, we've got plenty of things between engineering and operations that we're paying attention to and focused on. It's really easy to just, you know, not think about them. So if somebody else was thinking about them for us, I would expect it would result in a life cycle cost savings, because recoating whole tanks is really expensive, and so, you know, getting from a 15-year cycle to, you know, a 30, 35, 40-year cycle because we've done good maintenance on them, I think that would save us in the long run.
When I was a consultant in Virginia, I worked with the company to set up one of these service contracts for one of the local utilities, and they were wildly pleased with it because it did a number of things. The company that we worked with was like the first one that Julie described, in that we coated a tank. They came in and then basically they took ownership of that tank maintenance responsibility for the next 20 years. And what our contract with them said is, okay, today's a fresh coated tank, and in 20 years you're going to deliver me a fresh coated tank. So they basically took the tank coating and their maintenance effort, and they spread that cost over 20 years. And so we paid annual fees for that cost. But what it did is they got much more consistent inspection work done, and it got more consistent cleaning work done, because that's what they did. They scheduled their work out, they came in, they cleaned all their tanks for this company, and then that crew moved on to the next job. And when they did those inspections, they identified, okay, these are the deficiencies. The next year, they brought in a team that did the cleaning, and they did all those touch-ups, and then off they went into the next crew. And so they were able to do that on an economies of scale and an efficiency that is very difficult for us to do. I'm paying mechanics and operators to do coatings maintenance on structures, and that is, I think, probably not really efficient. I mean, the people who are doing this painting, they're paid, quite honestly, a lot less than our staff are paid. And so there was real value, and the organization was really happy with that product, and it actually reduced their maintenance burden. They're then able to take their staff and put them to work doing other things that they're good at and were important and necessary, rather than having this maintenance burden for their staff that they're not good at, that doesn't take a priority. That, as Julie said, I think we will go in and inspect the tank, recognize, we need to come back and touch this coating up, but it's low priority, and we're, you know, the chances of us doing a contract to bring a firm in to go touch up one tank that's the burden to do that contracting. It just doesn't rise to the top. It is a fairly small amount of work that's critical for the life cycle of that asset, but it doesn't. It's not as pressing, so it's difficult for us to do that consistently. So
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about kind of the distributed cost of doing it annually opposed to every 20 years.
I think to make your budget easier, doesn't fall. You know what you're spending every year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Also, I want to point out that even if we went with the service contract, we would still see an increased level of effort from our pumps crew, because these service contracts, they're going to want to get into the tank, every tank in our system, every 1 to 2 years, depending on the tank. And so, you know, right now we're taking down 6 tanks in a year and looking at them. That's definitely going to increase, and so that, you know, The pumps crew will need to participate in that, you know, getting the tank offline for them. But we're not then asking them, our tanks crew, to do the cleaning and do the touch-up and all those repairs. So it's a marginally more work for the pumps crew to implement the service contract program than if we ramped up our own district corrective program.
And even if you do it, the tank coating program, and they're in there and they're doing all the touch-up and all of that works, you still have to coat these things every 20 years. Maybe you're able to extend it from 15 to 20 years, or maybe even make it out 25 years, but you still have to do this coating job, these jobs. They still happen. It's not, it's just, they don't last. they're not permanent solutions.
So, here's what we have planned for up till now. Last year's plan, like I mentioned earlier, it only included the projects that were already in the works. And so Heavenly Tanks, that's half done. We've got a little bit of additional work to do in 2020. Trevor was just reporting that is getting rolling, and so that'll be done by 2022. And then Luther Tanks, we're right in the middle of that one as well, and it'll be done by 2021. The current 10-year plan that's in place doesn't have any more tank work for the remainder of the 10 years. So as we're developing our new 10-year plan this year, we're trying to work tanks into the mix. So one change is that with the consultant's alternatives evaluation for Luther, we're changing tank number 2 from a coating project to a reconstruction project. Tank number 1, we're changing it from a coating project to a strengthening and recoating project. And so we need to spend an extra $1.4 million at that site. And then we conceived of 3 different projects for the plan. One is a tank touch-up project. It takes care of all those smaller things that have been identified from inspections going back over time. There's 11 tanks on that list, and we've evaluated it about $1.2 million. And then we've got 5 tanks that we're working into the plan for recoating. We've known for a while that these tanks were in need of recoating. They were on the unconstrained list last year, the projects that we knew about that didn't have money for it. And so we've squeezed them back into the 10-year plan. And then finally, we have developed a rollout of a tank asset management program. And this is modeled after the type of service contract where they're starting basically with a like new condition tank. So we have 6 of those in the system right now, and we could start immediately with a contract that takes over the first 6 tanks. And then in 5 years, we'll have more of those tanks touched up and reconditioned and be able to roll those in. And then as we finish up kind of that round of rehabilitation, we add the last 5 to the list. So anyway, at the end of the day, that service contract program, we're anticipating it would cost about not quite $300,000 a year for the district to have someone else basically managing all 22 of those things.
Was it $20-30?
They're 2019, 2020 dollars, today's dollars.
Okay.
So that's pretty much all I've got. Lingering questions on things? Thank you for your time. Still staying here on the next one too.
You're still on the spot.
Before we move on to that, are there any concerns about the approach that we're taking in the development of 10-year plan? Because that is still in the works. This list that I presented you with, does it seem like a decent approach?
Well, I had just always assumed that the tanks would have been on, I've seen the process you guys go through on all of our assets, and how you rank them, the priorities, and the urgency and all that kind of stuff. I'm getting the impression from this presentation that the tanks weren't always on that.
But they were always lower priority than something else.
Right, and so maybe that's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
So are we proposing to add, what was it, $4.4 million within the next 10 years, in addition to what we anticipated for tanks? Is that kind of what, am I reading that correctly?
Let's see, so you added up all the numbers on the bottom?
Yeah, how many bucks, not the tank asset management program.
Okay, so the one thing that this doesn't capture is that the current 10-year plan for Keller, as Trevor mentioned earlier, was more like 5.7 or something like that. And so this 3.4 million is actually this year's number, not last year's number. So we were able to find an extra 2.3 million that are basically subsidizing, a number of these ads on the bottom.
So only half of it would be in addition to what you anticipated last year. I mean, it's okay. That's good.
Okay, are we on to the lower lateral policy?
Last thing on the tank assets, so we're still assessing this. We haven't, we're not saying this is exactly the direction the district should go in. We'll be talking about it more.
That's why I brought it up in the scope, in the context of your overall thing, and figure out how that's going to best fit into that.
Yeah, that'll be more confident.
Yeah, right now with the development of these, the tank touch-up project and the recoating projects and the asset management program, this was the best approach for us to wrap our heads around. We actually had sources for numbers to attribute to them, and so in the spirit of wanting to get them accounted for, that's kind of where this came from. But absolutely, we're continuing to collect information, talk to people who have these types of programs, and see what they're doing. Yeah, we'll report back on what we find. Thank you. Now we're really done.
We're really done. What about lower lateral policy?
Okay, so lower lateral policy. Last board meeting, y'all approved the authorization to bid for the Apache Avenue Sewer Replacement Project. That project, the scope of it excludes any replacement of the lower laterals. The budget that you approved basically just accounts for us installing new manholes in Maine going down the center line of Apache Avenue from Highway 50 to the magnet school. And then as we come across the laterals, either extending them out to the new main or cutting them off and tying them in. But the remainder of those laterals and their cleanouts would be the original laterals that were put in the 1960s. Now, El Dorado County has a complete streets project on that alignment, and will be coming in the year after us in 2021 and repaving that whole road. So engineering's recommendation is that we should actually be replacing those laterals as we go on this project and the cleanouts. I understand a number of those laterals actually don't even have cleanouts. And so we would like to be able to do that, but it has not been included in the scope yet because we don't own the laterals. The administrative code defines separately the upper lateral and the lower lateral. The property owner owns both. And while the admin code currently commits the district to making certain sorts of repairs and improvements upon a new connection to an existing lateral, it still squarely places the responsibility for the end-of-life replacement of laterals on the property owner. And so when we brought this concept up to Gary last week of like, what would be the implications if we were to add these laterals to this project? The concern was, well, without a change to the administrative code, it could be deemed a gift of public funds to those individual property owners. So what we would like to do is return to you at the next board meeting with some recommendations for changes to the admin code that would allow the district at board's direction upon staff recommendation to replace the lower laterals at their end of life. And our thinking behind this is we are in the infancy of a holistic gravity system rehabilitation and replacement program. And so eventually we are going to get to every lateral in the system. And so as we come through, we want to be given the ability to address the needs all the way to the property line, so that we provide the community with the best product. Any comments or concerns?
So there wasn't a concern of gift of public funds?
Yes, there was.
That's why they have to be great, right?
Yeah, I think what we talked about is if it would be, when the district does one of these projects, and there could be a number of reasons why, as we talked about, the lower lateral might be best replaced, or need to be replaced. One, because of alignment and slope. If the new surveying goes in at a certain level versus where the lateral is, it may require that change. So I think we were talking about it would be giving the district discretion to replace those lower laterals for a project if it was determined that the new survey necessitated that change. And that could be also maybe the lateral was such a bad shape that the district would felt it was doing it to lessen I&I for that lower lateral. Also, besides just alignment issues, but give the district discretion to do those replacements. Although otherwise, you'd have to figure out a way to assess property owners or require them to make changes in connection with the projects, which would be pretty cumbersome.
Could be at our discretion as part of a larger project. Now, if there's a failure in some of these lower lateral outside of a district project, it would remain the responsibility of the property owner.
Yes, I mean, even though the district, like this instance, want to replace for maybe a variety of reasons, the lower laterals, once it's replaced, then it goes back to the responsibility of the owner.
We provide a 1-year warranty, and then that would be the remaining property of the property.
Yeah.
And we did something on the water system with Marlette and Ponderosa.
Correct. It was about the Yard Water Lines project. We relocated private water services across, but that was across their properties. In this case, we're not on their properties for the most part. Yeah, we're in the street. But yeah, similar. They own those, and we relocated them at district expense because we were moving our main. So this is similar to that. We're making changes to our gravity system, and so also it's not only replacement that we're talking about. We're also talking about rehabilitation, since roughly there's as much lateral length out there as there is main length, all connected to our system. If we go through and do like a cast-in-place pipe rehabilitation lining project, we want to be able to also line the laterals up to the cleanout, because what we are finding as we do research in the industry is that to truly be effective for I&I, you got to get the liner all the way to the cleanout. Otherwise you're leaving half the problem in the ground.
And what was the cost on this project, on the patching project?
So for this particular project, there's just shy of 50 laterals that need to be reconnected. And so we're expecting it would be about a $200,000 additional cost to it.
And the alternative, if we were to replace them, we would have to do an assessment on their bills, and I don't think we've talked through what that would look like if we did those replacements and charge the homeowner. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be a political PR right there. You know, I didn't ask for that new sewer line, and now you're charging me for the lateral connectivity.
You want to get more people at meetings, right?
So, yeah, I can see why you are where you are, so, yeah.
And, you know,
I'm thinking that Gary's approach might be the way to do it, would be to change the ordinance such that they still own it, but yet we're allowed to do certain things based on our needs, and without gifting to somebody. Because at first blush, you're thinking like, well, wait a minute, I own mine, you're pricing this guy's for free.
Right.
But that's not exactly what's going on.
And I see, you know, if we go this direction, this is basically the first step of a more comprehensive lateral integrity program, which does get up in our customers' business because, you know, there's that section of the lateral that's on their property that's beyond what we're talking about, but, you know, also it needs to be addressed at some point and have, that's a problem for another day, but this is the first step.
Lower laterals and got problems in the upper lateral, probably also. Many years ago, Lahontan was trying to pass something that would require everybody to have their laterals tested when the property was sold.
And East Bay Mud now has that. Yeah, they do.
But that they didn't get very far with it, there's a lot of resistance.
Sorry? How is City Community has something where they pull things lower or something, is that on waters?
Smoke testing?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. And Tahoe City doesn't own the lower lateral, so they're in a little bit different situation. We went up and saw their sewer rehabilitation project summer before last with the lining project, and watched them line those laterals. It's kind of a cool process. It's blowing out at the end of the line.
So what's the scale of the project that's going to allow STP to use solar laterals? Because I guess I agree with him. I agree with maximum flexibility. You know, essentially what people have said, but there is some question of fairness to me. Even though we technically won't own it, Apache's getting a new complete street, getting new laterals, only for them, great for them. You're a block over, you're paying for your own bill, or STPD comes and does something more minor in your place. Where is it triggered? Where's the arguments begin? Where's the fairness argument? Like, how do we settle that? I don't think it's going to be just as simple as saying, oh, you know, this won't be getting public funds. I think there has to be the mechanism to ensure that if you cross a threshold, this is when it kind of triggers in, so that way it's black and white. You don't get in that tit for tat with folks as time goes forward.
I agree, and it's going to be an interesting conversation to have, but I think we will have on every project. You know, in the development phase of every project of like, okay, what's the plan for the laterals on this particular project? You know, is there something about the configuration that's demanding that we replace those laterals? Or is it going to be a condition-based decision? Or are we just going to budget it and do it on everyone so that we're being equitable and fair? I feel like that's...
I think an example would be the DORADO project from this last summer, the emergency project. In that particular project, we adjusted the alignment slightly, but we stayed very close to the existing alignment of the sewer line. And on those laterals, some of them we did have to chase them back up and tie them onto private property in order to get those tie-ins back in for those laterals. But we didn't go into that project saying we're replacing every lateral on the project. Some of those laterals we were able to tie in, particularly as we were close to the existing alignment. In this case, we're taking the sewer line from the shoulder and putting it in the center of the road. And so it's a completely different location, and being able to chase those laterals, it's definitely a different scale of project and a different type of work. But I agree with you, it's where do you draw that line? What I think we're asking for in the change in regulations is that this be a case-by-case discussion.
I almost said, you know, I was thinking the same thing, Nick. You said black and white, which is which is good, but then our projects are black and white, you know, everyone's got its unique, yeah, it's got its unique problems and features, so.
Well, that's inherently the issue with regulation, full stop, I would argue.
Yeah.
Is that, and in essence, the working regulation that exists for everything we do. But it's still, there's part of me that this is problematic for me to some degree. I think it could be addressed, but I think it needs, the idea that there is no real governing like principle except for kind of our feelings as we get into a project. From a PR perspective or from a fairness perspective, I think that could be problematic. I don't know how you would define these things, or how you would look to kind of, because I do agree with Randy, working on projects, there's a lot of gray area, and it's a challenging exercise, but just kind of thinking about that, like what triggers, I mean, I think you posed a great example, and maybe it wouldn't have to be specifically defined, but something like that, where, relocating the main, and sort of getting a few examples to guide people.
And I think the proposed language will bring that back here. We'd love to get recommendations on how to modify and improve that. But one of the pieces in there, I think, as we talked about it before, is that the work needs to be in the best interest of the district, and that is kind of the overarching. I guess maybe that's the governing principle: is this in the best interest of the district as a project, so that we don't have I&I in this case, and we don't have, given the scope of this project, there is benefit for us to go ahead and get this done now, given that it's complete streets in the future. We're not paying for paving. If we had to do this project and we put this line in the middle of the road, we have to pave this entire road. We're not doing that. We're just going to do trench patching. They're going to come back in and do paving work in the future. And this eliminates this future excavations that would have to happen to tear that road up. So there's benefits in that way to this project that we can, I think, make the case that this is beneficial. But once we draft that language, I think definitely having a discussion, and is there a way to tweak that and put examples in, I think that's a great idea, and we'll talk about that when we bring it.
Well, I actually like the direction you're going in that, keeping it more open-ended, the best interest in the district. It could be just that simple, perhaps. And then, staff comes before the board, makes their case for the project, and if the board agrees, hey, this is in the best interest of the district, then I think that's the argument we make. Just some fail-safe to make sure that it's just, people have to see that there's some rationale going into these different types of decisions. Great.
And I would think the reassessment of what's in the best interest would, in addition to configuration, would also look at, what's the maintenance history on that particular main line and lateral. What's the, if we have a lateral camera, you run a camera out, what do you see? Is it pristine? Do we look at it and think this line's going to be like 50 years of life?
Actually, because you are second, Dwayne has been up first. You still want to say something, Dwayne?
I wasn't sure if I could talk on this, but Cuz and I were talking about it in 2002, we did it over in Toggle Meadows. But one of the main reasons, or two reasons, I think the district ought to consider, even at the great expense, is that property owners are often devastated by what some plumber did years ago by not doing a good job. But the not good jobs, I think, are a great source of our I&I into our system. No matter what we do out in the street, we've got thousands of connections on properties that are terrible that are causing I&I. So there might be justification for that reason.
I was just going to bring that up in 2002, the Tall Meadows. I just started the sewer crew. It's also an emergency. There's so much I&I. Obviously, that's under the lake. There's a lot of I&I coming through the laterals. So they lined a couple of mains and all the laterals, all the way up to the property line, and then stopped there. That was not yet. Can't play all the aces yet.
He's holding back.
You're going to meter them out one at a time until you retire?
Okay, well, good. We'll look forward to this proposed change in our ordinance, and then we'll hash it out then. Well, that's at the end of the list. Has anybody else got anything that they're going to add last minute on us here? I do it.
I can't help myself. I tried to catch that outside, but I missed it. I think either at the last board meeting or the board meeting before, I brought up that the city of South Lake Tahoe is getting together a delegation to go down to Mecca, our sister city. And I just wanted to follow up with that. It sounds like right now we're planning on sending 2 staff members to join that delegation. Jose Ruiz, who is one of our supervisors in operations, is very familiar with our wastewater treatment process, and his wife and grandmother are also from Mecca. He's really familiar with the area. And Tony Prado in our water department, he's our supervisor. He knows everything about our water system here, has a connection with Mecca, and will be able to bring an issue in that city is both water quality and lack of wastewater treatment. So just joining that coalition that's going down there. Sounds like there's going to be 2 folks from South Tahoe Refuse, 2 council members from the city, as well as 2 to maybe 3 city staff going. So a great opportunity to build relationships with our partners locally, as well as our sister city.
Yeah, I think it's just a great opportunity to partner with the city and Mecca and provide some help down there. I guess I just want to say a little bit about the cost. We would be covering staff time and the cost of plane tickets. But thereafter, Mecca, they're taking care of the lodging, the meals, and everything else. So, it's very worthwhile.
No, Tim, you already did your talk.
It was brought up that one of the things we might want to pay attention to is the violence situation that may be going on down there, and to make sure it is safe for travel, for employees to travel.
Yeah, our thought was we would follow the city's lead. If they're doing the research and connecting with the
Make sure they don't get
delegation.
you also, because you read about it almost once a week now of something pretty nasty happening in different parts of it.
I think one of the benefits of sending these 2 individuals is that they're familiar with the area. They go down there not annually or every other year, so they have some familiarity with it.
Okay. You can see past the future meeting, we do have a couple of closed session items to discuss. So let's get it. Move out of closed session into open session, and there's nothing to report, and we'll adjourn the meeting.